In this lecture, we are going to learn about few more string methods in JavaScript like includes, starts with, and ends with. The includes, start with, and ends with are string methods in JavaScript that provide convenient way to check if a string contains a specific substring or if it starts or ends with a particular string. And all these three methods returns a Boolean value. Let's try to understand these method with some examples. And let's start with includes method. So the include methods determines whether a string contains a specified substring or not. It returns true if the substring is found, otherwise it will return false. So to the includes method, we can pass two parameters. The first parameter is mandatory, which is the substring which we want to check for in a given string. And the second parameter is optional and it is the position parameter, and this specifies from which position, from which index the search should start. Let's try to understand includes method with a simple example. So here we have a string value called str which is storing this string hello world. Now in this string I want to check if this string contains a word called hello. So for that, on the str string, we are going to call the includes method. And to this, we are going to pass the string which we want to search for in this str string. Here, I'm going to pass hello. Now, as we have learned, this includes method is going to return us a Boolean value. Let me go ahead and let me create a variable and let me call it as maybe is included. And let's go ahead and let's log this is included in the console. If I save the changes, you will see that it has returned us true. Now, if I pass a value, a string which is not present in this str string, for example, JS is not present in this string. If I save the changes, in that case, it will return us false because this string is not present inside this str string. And here, if I pass world and if I save the changes, in this case also it will return us true because this substring world, it is present in this str string. All right, and if I pass comma also, and if I save the changes, it will return us true because in this string, we also have this comma. So this includes method searches for a string inside a given string. Now includes method is case sensitive. So if I pass hello with h in lowercase and if I save the changes, it will return us false because there is no string in this str string where we have a word called hello which starts with lowercase h. So that's why it is returning us false. But if we want to do a case insensitive check, what we can do is on this str, first we can convert all the characters of this str string to lowercase or to uppercase. In this case, I'll convert it to lowercase and then I will check if a given string is present or not. Here I'm converting it to lowercase because the string which we are passing to this includes method, that is all in lowercase. If I save the changes here, you will see that now it is returning us true. So now it is checking for this string in this str string by first converting it to lowercase using this lowercase method, and then it will search for this string hello in that resulting string where all the characters is in lowercase. I hope you got the point. Now here this includes method is going to search for a string or a character from anywhere in the string. So in this string, anywhere if a given word is present, this includes method is going to return us true. Only if that string or that character is not found in the given string, then it will return us false. But let's say what we want is, we want to check if a string starts with a given string. For that, we can use another method called startsWith. So let me copy these two lines and let me also comment it. Let's paste it here and I'm going to call this variable as is starts with. You can name this variable anything and we are going to log this is starts with. And now let me remove this to lowercase and now I'm going to use the starts with method. Basically this starts with method is going to check for a given string in the beginning of this string. In this case, it is going to check for this string in the beginning of this str string. And this starts with method is also case sensitive. So if I pass hello with H in uppercase, if I save the changes, you will see it has returned us true. But if I change it to lowercase and if I save the changes, you will see it is returning false, because starts with also it does a case sensitive check. So if you want to make it case insensitive, then again you can use toLowerCase first on this string, and after that you can call this starts with method and you can pass the string which you want to search for all in lowercase. Then here if I pass, let's say, world, now this str string, it does not start with this word world, so in this case also it will return us false. And here if I also pass a character, for example h, and if I save the changes, it has returned us true because this str string starts with this uppercase h. But if I pass any other character, for example w, and if I save the changes, it will return us false because this string, it does not start with this character lowercase w. Now if you want to search for a string or a character from the end, then instead of starts with, you can use ends with. So again, let me copy these two lines and let me also comment it. And now let's talk about ends with method. So here I'm going to name the variable as is ends with. You can name this variable anything. And in this str string, I want to check if that string ends with. So for that, I'm going to use this ends with, this function, and I want to check if it ends with, let's say, this character w. If I save the changes, here we have an error because we need to log this is ends with. Now if I save the changes, you will see that it is returning us false because this string does not ends with this character w. But if I type world and if I save the changes, here also it has returned false because this string ends with world, and after that we also have this exclamation. So that's why in this case it has returned us false. But if I add that exclamation also in the search string and if I save the changes, you will see that now it is returning us true. If I only pass exclamation and if I save the changes, it is returning us true. If I pass, let's say, ld and exclamation, so this string ends with ld and exclamation, in this case also it should return us true. Okay, this should be L. So if I save the changes, in this case also it should return us true. But if I specify any word, for example, just LD without exclamation, and if I save the changes, it will return us false because here the string ends with LD and after that we also have this exclamation. So ends with checks if a given string ends with a substring which we are passing to this ends with method. So this is the use of includes method. The includes method search for a substring or a character anywhere in the source string. The starts with search for a substring or a character in the start of the string, and ends with search for a string or a character at the end of the string. It is as simple as that. Now let's try to understand the use case of the includes method starts with and ends with some example. So let's say we have a use case where we want to validate if the email is valid or not. So for that, let's write a function and let's call this function validate email. And here I'm going to write a very simple function to validate the email. So here, when this function will be called, we are going to pass an email address. So for example, if I call this function, here let's pass some email. Okay, and we want to validate whether this email is proper or not. So for validating this email, we are going to check if the email address contains this @ symbol and it ends with .com. Okay, and it should not start with this @ symbol. If an email starts with the @ symbol, it is an invalid email. And an email should have this @ symbol, after that the domain, and here we are simply going to check for .com domain, but the domain can be .in, .info, etc. But we are only going to check for .com. So here, let's write a condition if email dot starts with. So here we are going to pass this @ character. So if the email starts with @ it is an invalid email. So what we are going to do is here let's create a variable is valid and initially let's set it to false. And I'm going to use let keyword here to create this isValid variable. So if the email starts with at, in that case, we will set this isValid to false. Okay. Then what we are going to check is if email dot ends with. So here I'm going to use this ends with method, and we are going to check if the email ends with .com. And before that, I'm going to use this not operator. That means we are checking if the email does not ends with .com. In that case also, we are going to set this isValid to false. And finally, we are also going to check if email includes the at character. Okay, the at character should not be present in the start. If the at character is present in the start, that means that email is an invalid email. But the email must have this at character except at the first position. Okay, if it does not have this at character, in that case this includes method will return false. So here again we are going to use this not operator. So if the email does not include this at character, in that case again we are going to set this isValid to false. Otherwise, if none of these conditions are true, then we are going to set isValid to true. Okay, and finally, let's return is valid. So now when we are calling this validate email function, it is going to return us a Boolean value. Let's go ahead and let's log that Boolean value in the console like this. So if I save the changes here, it has returned us true because this is a valid email, but let's pass some invalid email. So for example, let's pass another email. Let's say test@gmail.com, but here I don't have this .com. I'll simply say test@gmail. So in this case, it should return us false, but for some reason it has returned us true. That's because after checking each of these if statement, we are setting this isValid to true. So what I'm going to do is I'll not create this isValid variable. Instead, what I'll do is I'll simply return if any one of these conditions fail. So I'll return false. Same thing let's do in other if statements also. So here also I'll return false if the email does not ends with .com, and here also I'll return false if the email does not include this at symbol. Otherwise, we will return true. So let me remove this statement, and from here let's return true. If I save the changes now, so the first email is a valid email, but the second email is not a valid email. Let's try with another email where I'll start the email with at symbol, but here I'm going to have .com. If I save the changes, here also it should be false. And let's try one more email, and here I'm not going to start it with at symbol, but in this email I'm also not going to have this at symbol. Instead, I'll say test.gmail.com. If I save the changes, in this case also it should return as false. So this is a simple function which is going to validate the email by checking if it does not start with this at symbol, it has this .com. If it does not have the .com, then the email is invalid, and in the email we must have this at character, and it should not be present in the start. So this is one simple use case where we can use the starts with, ends with, and includes method. Another use case is, let's say we want to filter some products from the products array. So let's specify another use case, filter products by name. So if I scroll up, you will see, before that, let me comment these console.log statements here. So if I scroll up, you will see we also have a products array, and in that products array, we have some product objects. Each product object has the ID, the name, and the price. So let's say we want to search for the products by its name. For that, I'm going to write another function. I'll call it as filter products. Okay, this filter products, it is going to take a search string. All right, and now what we are going to do is on the products array, I'm going to call the filter method, because as we have learned, in order to filter elements from an array, we can use filter method. To this, we need to pass a callback function, and the first argument of the callback function will be the current element on which this filter method is looping over. So this filter method, we know that it is going to loop over each product object in this products array, and for each iteration, it is going to assign that product object to the first parameter of this callback function, which we are going to pass here. Let me call it as P. And here we want to check if that product, so a product object will be assigned to this P variable. For the first iteration, this product object will be assigned. For the second iteration, this product object will be assigned. And for the third iteration, this product object will be assigned. So each product object has this name property. So we are going to check if p.name, and here I'm also going to convert it to lowercase first for the search. So for that, I'm going to use this toLowerCase method. And here we want to search for the search string anywhere in the string. Okay. And for that, we can use includes method. And there we will pass the search string. So I'm going to pass this search string here. And we know that this includes method, it is going to return us a Boolean value true or false. So if the search string is present in the product name, in that case, this includes method will return us true. Otherwise, if the search string is not present in the product name, it will return us false. And to make it more readable, what I'll do is I'll move this to a separate line, something like this, just to make it more readable. And here I'm not using the return keyword, because if you see here we are using arrow function syntax and I have not wrapped this body within parenthesis. So when I have not wrapped it within parenthesis, we don't need to explicitly use the return keyword here. Okay. And this filter method, it is going to return us an array with the filtered products. So that we want to return from this function, from this filter products function. All right. And if this implementation is a little bit confusing for you, what I'll do is I will wrap the request body within parenthesis like this. So what we are doing is on this P, we are first converting the product name to lowercase, and then on that we are calling this includes method. And finally, we also need to return the value from here, because now I have wrapped it within parenthesis. So we also need to use this return keyword explicitly. And somewhere we have some syntax error. Okay, I think we are missing the closing parenthesis. Let's specify it here. All right, let's save the changes now and let's go ahead and let's call this filter products. And to this, let me pass maybe smart. Okay, and we know that this filter products method, it is going to return us an array. Let's go ahead and let's log that array in the console. So basically, in this products array, we want to search for all those products whose name includes smart in it. In this products array, we have two products which has this word smart in it. So if I save the changes, it should log those two objects in the console. So here you see the filter method has returned us an array. In that array, we have two products where we have this word smart. Okay, if I pass, let's say, watch here, and if I save the changes, it will return us those two products for which the product name contains watch in it. All right. So here we have used this includes method because we want to search for this search string anywhere in the product name. But if you want to filter or if you want to search the product which starts with a given string, then instead of includes, you can use starts with. If I save the changes now, so we do not have any product which starts with this string watch. That's why it has returned us an empty array. If I pass smart here and if I save the changes, you will see it has returned us two products which starts with this word smart. And if I scroll up, we also have a product called analog. So if I pass analog here and if I save the changes, you see it has returned us an array with one product which starts with analog. So you can also use starts with if you want to search for products whose name starts with a given string. So I hope with these two use cases, now you understand the use of includes, starts with, and ends with method. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.